In 1969, Kazakh archaeologists under the leadership of Kemal Akishev made a unique discovery. The discovery was later compared to the greatest planetary archaeological finds of the 20th century. The world was presented with a warrior of the Saka period in a golden guise. This discovery was compared worldwide in its importance with the discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb. Thus, the new world star of archaeology shone with a bright light in the world's sky. In the 30s of the 20th century, Kemal, like many of his peers, was left without parents. It was a dark and troubled time. Time of Red Terror. And only with the help of his uncle, Kanish Satpayev, he graduated from school in Almaty and entered Voronezh Military School, which was located then in Samarkand. It was 1941.
Upon graduation from the secondary, they all entered military school. He got to the Samarkand Military School of Communication, where they were trained for 9 months, and immediately sent to the front. In 1942, he got to Moldova. Upon Dniester, here to this place.
In 1943, Kemal Akishev fought near Voronezh within the 230th Stalin Rifle Division, crossed the Dnieper, freed Donbass and Tiraspol. In the war, he showed indomitable willpower and strong character. He was seriously wounded and eventually demobilized. At the end of 1944, 20-year-old Lieutenant Kemal Akishev returned to Alma-Ata. He wanted to follow in his uncle's footsteps and become a geologist, but the severe wound received at war put an end to this dream.
He had a broken ligament on his right hand, so his uncle suggested that he entered the history department and the archaeology.
Kemal Akishev entered the Faculty of History of Kazakh State University. And history, especially archaeology, quickly captivated the young lieutenant. It all started with the first expeditions to the South Kazakhstan region under the leadership of Bernstein.
Kemal Akishev начал свою археологическую деятельность.
Kemal Akishev started his archaeological career participating in expeditions, not only as a leader, but as an excavator with his mutilated hand. It was the 1948 excavations of the Borizhar burial ground in the south of Kazakhstan in the valley of the Aris River. After graduating from KazSU, Kemal was forwarded for postgraduate study to the Leningrad Department of Institute of Archaeology of the USSR Academy of Sciences. He was sent there by Satpayev. While being a student, he first gets into the South Kazakhstan expedition. There he visits Otrar and other ancient cities of the Great Silk Road for the first time.
Он защитил диссертацию по
He defended his thesis on the Bronze Era of Kazakhstan. On the same field, i.e. the study of the Bronze Age, Akishev met with an outstanding man, Alke Hakanovich Margulan. What's interesting, archaeology for Margulan was his second path of life, because he defended his first thesis on the Kazakh language and literature. And Kanish Amantayevich asked Alke Hakanovich to divert to archaeology because it was necessary in those days. There was a huge blind spot in archaeology, and so began the archaeological life of Margulan and Akishev. It was a difficult post-war time. The country was rising from the ruins. The rapid development of mineral resources, construction of GRES in the east, development of ferrous and non-ferrous metallurgy in central Kazakhstan, systematic oil and gas production in the west. The territory of Kazakhstan literally turned into a large building site. with intensive construction of industrial facilities carried out everywhere. Global projects that changed the landscape of the Great Steppe were implemented. In 1954, the rapid development of virgin and fallow lands began. Thousands of tractors moved to the untilled land of central Kazakhstan. In these conditions, the scientific community of Kazakhstan faced the question of conducting rescue archaeological works to preserve the historical and cultural heritage of the Great Steppe.
Когда началось освоение целинных и залежных земель, как говорили в то время.
When the development of virgin and fallow lands began, as it was said at the time, it was necessary to conduct rescue accelerated archaeological work. At this time, Margulan, his teacher, worked, and they worked in different places side by side. Margulan worked in central Kazakhstan. Kemal Akishev worked in virgin lands of northern Kazakhstan and mainly in the Ili lands, in the zone of flooding of the Kapchigai hydroelectric power station.
Это в зоне затопления Копчегайской ГЭС.
Since 1954, Kemal Akishev led an archaeological expedition to excavate the mounds of the Saka kings for 4 years.
The Persians called the tribes living in the south and southwest of the Kazakh steppe between the Aral Sea and the Caspian Sea the Saka, while ancient authors called them the Scythians. Beyond two rivers, with muddy water begins plain steppe. The steppe is inhabited by a people called Saka. Based on inscription.
Бехистунская надпись это на скале Бехистун и особенно вот рельефы Персеполиса.
The based on inscriptions and reliefs of Persepolis have images of the Saka Tigraksauda bearing gifts. Their ceremonial robes and the weapons they have show that they are ambassadors.
Предметы вооружения, кинжалы и прочее у них при себе.
Территория Казахстана буквально усеяна царскими курганами, огромными курганами, где похоронены вожди саков.
The territory of Kazakhstan is literally dotted with royal mounds where the chiefs of the Saka are buried. But at those times, the early 60s, there was nothing known about it. So Kemal Akishev was one of the first who began to study it, and many years of research resulted in a wonderful book, Culture of the Saka and Uysun of the Ili River Valley, where the questions of studying the culture, art, mythology, and lifestyle of this powerful union of tribes were raised. Associations of tribes that lived on this land in the first millennium BC had a large population and a related language, and developed their culture. They created the state, destroyed empires, created unique culture, being skillful in the art of manufacturing artifacts of gold and precious metals. They were the founders of the nomadic civilization that made a huge contribution to the world history of mankind. The Scythians are not in the habit of putting idols, altars, and temples to any deity except Ares, but in honor of the latter, they in the Scythian regions have been accustomed to build huge mounds of brushwood, at the top of which they erected an old iron sword that served as the idol of Ares. They sacrifice yearly cattle and horses to this sword. Herodotus. One of the indicators of the high culture of the Saka civilization is the mounds of Beshatyr necropolis. Beshatyr 5 Marquis necropolis is considered a spiritual mecca of the ancient Saka who lived in the first millennium BC in the territory of present-day Kazakhstan. The most famous of them is the Beshatyr burial ground, which has 31 mounds. The largest mound, called Semirechynskaya Pyramid, had a diameter of 105 meters and a height of 17 meters. Wooden tombs of these mounds were built from logs of Tian Shan spruce, perfectly preserved for more than 2,000 years. Kemal Akishev devoted most of his life to the study of this monument. Beshater is not just a funeral and memorial structure. It suggests that the saga had a powerful architecture, the architectural idea, the art of architecture.
When they examined the wooden tombs, they found frog skins and snake skins between logs, so this suggests that these wooden tombs remained not covered during some time and they were buried later. Apparently, the kings prepared their burial places, and only after some time, these tombs were covered with huge mounds.
До 40-х, 50-х годов
Until the 40s and 50s, it was believed that Kazakhstan is the territory of nomads only, and this stereotype had to be broken.
стереотип нужно было ломать.
The conscious humiliation by the Eurocentrists, largely accepted by Soviet propaganda and signs of the history of nomads, its interpretation as the history of a careless and lazy, windless people leading a semi-animal life, played its destructive and disastrous role for the Kazakh national consciousness. Nursultan Nazarbayev.
В 1969 году в одной из статей он пишет.
In 1969, he writes in one of his articles, starting this year, we will make a turn in the archaeology of Kazakhstan. From now on, we will deal with the problems of a settled way of life and urban culture of Kazakhstan. I would like to say that Semirachi monuments created future Otrar. They gave him faith on the part of the methods and methodology, and finally, the actual material. One of the first episodes of Kemal Akishev's scientific life begins in the south of Kazakhstan. He refuted the concept of the Eurocentrists about the myth of the Kazakh nomadic society. After his discoveries, the entire archaeological world was forced to rewrite the history of the nomads.
Впервые в Союзе был использован метод.
For the first time, the method of large-scale uncovering of areas was used union-wide. This approach allows fixing the overall layout of the city, the definition of the central districts, the streets and their intersection, and uncovering entire residential complexes consisting of several rooms. Moreover, measures were taken to study the irrigation system, the water lifting device, and the reservoir, and all this was carried out by Akishev's team.
Кемаля Акишевича Акишев.
Есть такое заблуждение, что отрарскую экспедицию разработали, сказать, руководство тогдашнего.
There is a misconception that the Otrar expedition was developed by the authorities of Kazakhstan of those times. It was not. It was developed in the trivial, shabby office of the archaeology sector by Kemal Akishev, a field commander.
Это было разработано таким человеком, как Кемаль Акишев, и разработано было вполне таким вот методами командира, полевого командира.
Kemal Akishev, as a student, was interested in ancient cities in the south of Kazakhstan. For him, the south of Kazakhstan was the cradle of the Kazakh people. Moreover, the word cradle is an expression of Akishev himself. Otrar is mentioned by many famous medieval geographers and historians. Ibn Hawqal and al-Maqdisi, al-Istari, and Mahmud of Kashgar wrote about it. Travelers described Otrar as a large shopping center at the intersection of caravan routes with huge palaces, mosques, and other buildings. For the first time, the name Otrar is given by the famous historian at-Tabari. At the same time, another name of the city and district, Farab, is mentioned.
Замечательными находками ознаменовались уже первые годы раскопок.
Remarkable finds marked the first years of excavations of the ruins of the famous medieval city of Otrar, the name of which, a few hundred years ago, was known to many countries of the West and East. Already, the first excavations of the upper cultural layers of medieval Otrar gave the science new materials to study. A large series of irrigation vessels with polychronous painting was especially valuable among the scientific material. At the bottoms, there were signs that turned out to be tribal tamgas of the Kazakh people. Akishev gained state support, proving the importance of this region for the national identity of the Kazakhs. Akishev counted on a huge budget for the excavations in Otrar. In general, he needed 10 million rubles for a period of 20 years.
Otrar settlement is a huch hill, 80 meters high. It has a quite large pentagonal shape, and it's quite hard to climb it. Kemal Akishev recalled, "We were so young, we climbed up. Karl Moldakhmetovich, Beken, Kadyrbayev, Orazbayev, and we thought something like, we'll take it out in 20 years. They had that young passion, but unfortunately, it's still not finished. They even did not reach the bottom, the lower layers. They excavated only to the 15th century, although the settlement was undoubtedly founded in the 1st century.
Din Muhammad Kunaev understood the importance of this project and generously financed it. Serious political interests were at stake, and Akishev made a bid for them. It was risky, but the risk paid off.
Отравскую эпопею хорошо тогда поддержали высшие руководители Казахстана, Дин Мухаммед Кунаев.
The Otrar epic was well supported by the top authorities of Kazakhstan. Din Muhammad Kunaev personally supported it, and there was no such powerful archaeological base with a laboratory in any region of the Soviet Union. And thanks to this, the Otrar theme is still not removed from the agenda. Akishev appealed to an interesting move to attract attention. In the application, he pointed out that according to some ancient Arabic sources, there was a large library of manuscripts in Otrar, which could only be compared with the famous library of Alexandria. But so far, no trace of this library has been found. Akishev risked much because of this, yet unproven assumption, but the result was worth it. For many years, the state regularly funded the excavations. According to Kemal Akishev, the famous Al-Farabi and no less famous in the Eastern world, Ahmed Yasavi, were born and lived in Otrar. This was later proved by his disciples.
Of
course, Kemal Akishev could not make his discoveries without his team. The team includes Karl Moldakhmetovich Baypakov, the largest specialist in the field of urban culture who devoted his life to the study of the ancient urban culture of South Kazakhstan and Jetsu, and Lev Borisovich Yerzakovich. The three of them formed the backbone of the South Kazakhstan archaeological expedition. In Otrar, there was also a palace known from ancient written sources as the Palace of Berdibek. He was the ruler of Otrar in the 14th century. The same written sources say that the Great Timur gave his last orders from this palace. So far, about 24 rooms of the palace have been excavated. During the excavations, glazed bricks, maiolica tiles, and gilded tiles were found. All this undoubtedly testifies to the greatness of the palace complex. Starting from the shores of the Seyon, Timur stopped in the Otrar Palace of Berdibek on Wednesday, 12th of Rajab. All the princes, emirs, and relatives of the court occupied a separate room each. Sharaf ad-Din Yazdi.
Нужно было показать миру, что казахи не только страна.
It was necessary to show the world that the Kazakhs are not only a country of nomads to break this stereotype, and so Kemal Akishev set his hands and worked with his team for more than 20 years. It was really a complex expedition that worked very professionally and provided excellent materials. 1970-72, Ancient Otrar, 3 authors, Akishev, Baipakov, and Yerzakovich. Then followed Medieval Otrar, Late Medieval Otrar, a series of special collections that describe all these discoveries, which were and are of strategic importance for Kazakhstan. It is very difficult to imagine if we have just started to study the settlements on the Great Silk Road. We wouldn't have the colossal scope of material we have now. Dozens, hundreds, thousands of publications are now available, and it's all due to the decision of one person. Artifacts discovered in Otrar have proven the existence of a local culture since antiquity. In addition, independent development of agriculture and the urban culture in Kazakhstan. Please note, the urban one, in Kazakhstan, where, according to scientists of the time, the urban culture could not exist, a priori. Akishev thus separated Otrar from the common heritage of Central Asia and rejected the assumption of a joint origin of settled urban culture. That's it. Was this discovery worth a little understatement in the application? The Otrar expedition became the largest archaeological project of the Soviet Union. It allowed Akishev to speak about the continuity of social development in the region since the Stone Age. The discovery of Paleolithic artifacts showed that Kazakhstan became one of the first places on Earth where people lived. Cultural layers uncovered by archaeologists allow us to trace the history of its development from the creation of the first urban settlements of the Kongu state to a major historical and cultural center. Here are the remains of cities of different eras, as well as a reservoir and irrigation canals. The ancient landscape testifies to the occupation of the local population with agriculture. Historians consider Otrar the center of ethnogenesis of Kazakhs. Otrar has attracted attention by an enviable location, being at the crossroads of ancient caravan routes. It was one of the richest and most developed cities of the Silk Road in Central Asia. Otrar is mentioned in the travel records of almost all Arab and Persian authors who had ever visited this region. Khwarezm Shah, not obeying the instructions of Genghis Khan and not delving deeply, gave an order allowing the shedding of their blood and the seizure of their property. What he didn't understand was that with permission to kill them, life would be forbidden. Khair Khan killed them, but he ruined the whole world and deprived the whole people. Rashid ad-Din, Collection of Chronicles. In 1219, Otrar was attacked by the Mongol troops of Genghis Khan. For 6 months, the inhabitants of the city heroically held the siege and defended, but as a result of betrayal, Otrar was captured by the enemy, destroyed, and burned.